What's going on, everyone? Welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. It appears that now the head has now been dug out of the sand. Warner Brothers' CEO is somewhat, according to this report, teasing a new Superman game. Now, this could mean anything. Warner Brothers Discovery CEO hints at a new Superman game as shared by Okami Games, which is actually something of an article from tweaktown.com. We'll look at the article. It's really short. And so the citation on the quote here is basically, we have a very good gaming business with 11 different studios. It may be in the next couple of years that people spend more time hanging out in the Superman world and universe. Okami Games basically is citing this article over here from Tweaktown, pretty much talking about this. In a recent Q1 2023 earnings call, Warner Brothers CEO, Discovery CEO David Zaslav spoke about the power and flexibility of the company's video game profile. More specifically, Zaslav discussed how it is a wealth of wholly owned intellectual property franchises, which would encompass all forms of interactive entertainment. Hey, by the way, guys, this is just a lot of talk, to be very honest. I mean, Ubisoft does the same thing. I follow the division, and we always, from time to time, will talk a little bit about the earnings calls. And this is a way just to kind of like, beat your chest a little bit to make you sound like you're confident with investors. So pretty much what's going on here is this conversation as to how this is all going. The question now is, who is probably going to be developing a Superman game? My likely candidate is Warner Brothers Games Montreal. Some people are probably going to fall out of their chair from hearing that. I know, this is the internet. Everybody reacts over a hangnail like they just pretty much got stabbed in their, pinky toe or something like that. But the reality of the matter is, when you think about what Rocksteady is doing with the Suicide Squad game, ending the Arkham series and having that game pretty much go back into the oven, I don't necessarily think that they might be a candidate for it, because according to what Stephen Hill had shared a long time ago, he mentioned that Rocksteady is a one-game studio. Does this policy still hold true now that he has left the studio, he and Jamie Walker? We don't necessarily know. But they could have another Superman project in place. But keep in mind that a good old Rocksteady that made your Arkham games might not necessarily be there for the most part. Maybe they have, some of the good old, devs who made and worked on that project, but I don't necessarily know if most of them are still going to be in the studio continuing to get the work done. The second possibility is Monolith, but Monolith is working on their Wonder Woman game. So we have these two teams that are pretty much tied up with what it is that they're doing. And I think this is something that we have to pretty much take into account, because if you actually consider, a lot of the Warner Brothers titles from, their different IPs and their different properties, you really have to look at who is, in my opinion, what I think is an expert in making and working on these games. Then you think about NetherRealms. NetherRealms has been in this particular game business, but their biggest focus is making the fighting games. And it seems Mortal Kombat 12 is coming out. We haven't heard anything about an Injustice 3. We don't know if they're going to follow that game, or maybe it might be them that have an Injustice game in their back pocket that's in a Superman world that Zaslav is actually referring to. No one knows, because they are not a one studio game. They can sometimes be found to work, or at least in a sense, be dealing with other video games as time goes on. Now, when you think about these major teams, these heavy hitters, you also got to put some other teams in perspective that, are working on some other projects here and there. You have the Avalanche team that made the Hogwarts Legacy game. They could do a Superman game. Don't ever doubt that team. That team had a lot of people doubting them because they only had made some, Toy Story game or whatever it is. But then when rubber met the road and Hogwarts Legacy was released, everybody started to, basically tip their hat to this studio because they were able to deliver a true experience in a respectful way of exactly what that character, exactly what that world should look like. So they may be able to pay more respect to that character than many studios or many teams out there. So I put them actually in the running for who may be working on this particular project. But the most recent and the more likely, in my opinion, is Warner Brothers Montreal, because they have just basically, put out a superhero game. People may judge the success of the superhero game as kind of like the resume, or I would say the experience to work on a Superman game, but I don't think that's necessarily the case, because in my opinion, a video game is, what I think anyways, as good as the work that they put into it from a technical perspective and from the way they're able to put together the mechanics. Gotham Knights does that. They made 4 separate characters in one game that all play differently, fight differently, and we're able to put together cutscenes and unique, I would say unique markers in their story beats to be able to, highlight each character. Some people have criticized this as, oh, well, it just didn't seem like the story was, deep enough, but that's what happens when you stretch yourself too thin. We've not really seen Warner Brothers Montreal work on a single-player superhero game in a sense where they focused on one character. They focused on 4 characters, a very hard thing to accomplish, by the way. I mean, look at Redfall. Redfall is basically trying to pull off something similar, but their game has not received the quality that people would have expected. So me looking at the video game side, from how long it would have taken to develop something like this, I can say they have the technical expertise to put it together. Also, judging from the fact that they've had a Superman game canceled in the past, maybe that game has even been revived and resuscitated, and they're probably going to take things to a whole different level and refine the game to fit today's modern standards. So these are 2 of my candidates. You have the folk over at Avalanche. You also have the folk at Warner Brothers Montreal. They seem to me as a likely candidates to get the job done in regard to developing a Superman game if it's something that they can actually do. I have some videos that I made in the past talking about what it would take to make a good Superman game. I know we're going to get in the comments or someone says, it's going to be hard to make a Superman game because the character is overpowered. But you really have to go back to the TV series and go to the movies and see that Superman has a lot of weaknesses that you can actually explore or exploit to be able to get yourself a good video game out there. But let me hear your thoughts in the comment section. I really do appreciate you guys' time and audience. I appreciate your participation. And shout out to those who have, pretty much been talking about this for a long time. This is not the first time we've seen these things come out. People are curious and people would love to check, what this is about. Some people are saying, give it to Rocksteady. I said, no. Some people say, oh, they should give it to Insomniac. I said, nope, don't touch it. Every time people look at one studio that's doing one thing and do not want innovation, the fact that you want these big names to make this game is the fact that they're going to make it as formulaic as possible. They will not have the balls or the guts to innovate something new. They would not be willing to bend the norm. Gotham Knights and Warner Bros. Montreal bent the norms. They put an RPG superhero game out there in this time. So to me, I think they have more of the guts to get the job done. And Avalanche, in my opinion, they took on a huge franchise and were able to, in a sense, represent it in a very solid way, in my opinion anyways. But that's enough for me. Like I said, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll talk pretty soon in another one. Peace out.